This video is sponsored by NordVPN. Keep your internet browsing safe with one of the best VPNs on the market by going to nordvpn.org/illuminaughtii or using my code in the description box to get 70% off a 3-year plan plus 1 month for free. Ah yes, PETA. The newest problem child on my channel. It seems as though the moment I turn my head away from PETA to look at something else, they keep popping their heads back up to show me something else they've done wrong. I really thought I had made a video with a decent overview of the oopsies they made, but as it turns out, I had barely scratched the surface, and I am just constantly falling back down this rabbit hole even though I keep trying to escape. As you've probably seen from the title, we are going to be taking a look at where PETA puts some of its money, and I'll be honest, it's not good. And again, this started with a relatively superficial search. I kept hearing about these video games that PETA makes that are absolutely horrific, very graphic and disturbing, and I thought, hey, that might be something interesting to look into. And then it led me to finding out the ways they tried to shock children at their schools with grotesque imagery, and then the hole just opened all the way up like a big sinkhole. And I just kept finding more and more information as to what PETA is investing in as propaganda to spread their messages, and it's an absolute train wreck. So hello and welcome back to the channel. I'm Blair, or the Illuminati, and today we're going to be fastening our seatbelts and keeping our arms and legs inside the crazy train at all times. PETA is almost synonymous with controversy at this point, so you know that if they've popped up on my radar again, it is for nothing good. Just like with any video I do discussing controversial organizations, things are sure to get spicy, and I can assure you, much to my displeasure, that things will be very spicy in today's video. Because today, I take a look at some of the controversial ways PETA spends its money, from their shock tactics to bad video game parodies, and sprinkle in a little bit of the organization supporting domestic terrorism. You've got all the trimmings for today's video, so let's just get right into it. See, the thing about PETA that has always thrown me off since the first time I've encountered them is why do they do what they do? Their general message and what they claim to stand by is not really what I think of when I think of PETA. I understand the acronym is People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals. However, the first thing I think of are the crazy people throwing red paint on celebrities, but that's just what's top of mind for me. So I decided to go to Twitter and I asked you guys what's the first thing you think of when you hear PETA, and my god, none of you held back. A vast majority of you had a top-of-mind comment revolving around murdering animals and their abysmal kill shelter rates. For me, that would be a huge red flag if I was working for them. If my nonprofit's top of mind for many people is murdering animals while my mission statement is about protecting animal rights, then something very clearly went amiss. Now, the secondary group of comments revolve around PETA's many publicity stunts and controversies. Some of these I'll be discussing today, and some of these might be saved for a later date. But it varied a bit from discussing their video game parodies, which we will get into in a little bit, to how they use scantily clad women to promote their message, and everything else under the sun. The third set of comments were a lot of you guys just joking around or using the whole PETA stands for people eating tasty animals, because that joke is literally as old as time. But you know, people gotta say it because you're very cool and original, but we had those in there too. So yeah, I saw you guys, but still not funny. But here's what I'll say about PETA. This company claims to use resources to fundraise for the organization to further spread their message, but in reality, this company has devolved into internet gore trolls that thrive off notoriety and an extremely high kill rate of the very animals they claim to want to protect. But anyway, let's take a look at how PETA spends donation money to theoretically spread whatever they think their message is at this point, because I don't really know what it is, honestly. Let's start off by addressing their video games. It's something a fair amount of you had mentioned in my Twitter replies. PETA has been cooking up the idea to try and spread their message about animal rights and advocating vegetarian and vegan diets through video games for years. Their earliest game was a Flash-based game called Make Fred Spew. This Flash game coincided with a new anti-milk ad campaign PETA was running to lower the consumption of milk. What was interesting about this campaign is that it was heavily targeted at high school students. This means that PETA was okay with showing a gross image of a man vomiting from his mouth and through his nose, and then connecting that to an online flash game where you would continue to make this man puke a liquid lunch. In 2003, they released a video game called Save the Chicks, which was part of PETA's anti-dairy and anti-KFC campaign. They additionally released other games called Revenge of the PETA Tomatoes and Lobster Liberation, which was an early Frogger parody. It was not until 2007 that PETA finally began to attract a large audience within the gaming community with the release of the game called Super Chick Sisters, which, as you can tell, is a parody off of the name Super Mario Bros. In this game, you controlled two chicks named Chickette and Nugget, and you are out on a mission to rescue Pamela Anderson, who was being bullied by KFC mascot Colonel Sanders, aka Daddy Sanders. And yes, that is a reference to the KFC dating game, which, unlike this game from PETA, was actually fun to play. Now, as a side note, Pamela Anderson is more problematic than helpful for PETA's cause, and she's one hell of a massive hypocrite, and PETA clearly supports it and is okay with this behavior. Just as a quick note, Pamela Anderson's Dodge Viper was auctioned at a benefit for PETA, and the interior had a luxurious leather interior, which, as you know, leather is an animal byproduct. What is particularly hilarious about this donation is that she told the Associated Press in 2008, "I've been working with PETA for 15 years. They're my kind of ethical advisors. With them, I see actual results." Now, while she is framing this to be a good thing, here are some facts you probably want to know that will make this laughable. The first is that this article was written in 2008. The year 2000 Dodge Viper in question that she owned still had that luxurious leather interior. This means again that it's an animal byproduct. She directly tells the Associated Press that she had been working with PETA for 15 years. This means that she started working with them in 1993, but the Dodge Viper in question was made in the year 2000. Or 1999, sorry car people, it's not my gig, but I know what 2000 means. This means that even though she claims to have been an animal ambassador for PETA for all those years, she was still very much okay with purchasing animal byproduct goods while preaching to the public how terrible you are if you do those very things. But it's okay for her because she's a big celebrity who can just turn around and donate the car after she's had it for 8 years of fun, right? That seems a little bit hypocritical to me, but you know, hey, that's just me, I could be wrong. But anyway, let's get back to the obviously fantastic video games. That was just a little something that I found that I was like, hey, that doesn't quite add up. In 2008, PETA released an adaptation of the cooking simulator game Cooking Mama that was called Cooking Mama, Mama Kills Animals. And I'm sure many of you are not surprised by what I'm going to say. This video game was made up of a bunch of minigames that all related to preparing animal carcasses. What I found particularly interesting about this version of the game was that this was the first time that PETA encouraged its users to write Cooking Mama's developers to create a different version of the game with only vegetarian recipes. Now, that sounds a little absurd to most of you, and I agree. Asking a developer to recreate a popular game with only vegetarian recipes does not do anything to help your cause. However, it does make you look more annoying, which seems to be the trademark attribute of PETA. They also released another Flash game called Mario Kills Tanuki, which is a parody of Super Mario Bros. 3. PETA had decided to release a statement that the game was meant to be tongue-in-cheek, a fun way to call attention to a serious cause that raccoon dogs are skinned alive for their fur. They implied that by Mario wearing Tanuki, a non-real player in a non-real world, that they're sending the message that it's okay to wear fur. Now, I don't get that from the Mario games, and I don't really know anyone who took that kind of meaning from the Mario Bros. 3 game in any capacity. But somehow PETA thought this was a good idea too. And for the record, in this version of their game, the player controlled a skinned alive but living raccoon dog that chases Mario around to retrieve its fur. So it starts to become extremely clear that they make these games based off of popular games with large fan bases for the attention, but their message is incredibly warped and convoluted. Then we finally get to what is probably their most popular remake of a game, which is when they decided to recreate the Pokemon games and create their own version called Pokemon Black and Blue. This game was a parody of Pokemon Black and White that focused on animal fighting and experimentation. Now, I admit I have never played this game and I have no intention to play this game, but all I really need to know is that there's an Oshawott that's skinned alive in the game and by Ash himself. My first and immediate thought surrounding this is that Pokemon has a massive audience. While there are many Pokemon fans like myself who grew up with the franchise for years, there is a new wave of fans that are significantly younger than me. These fans are young children who may have been potentially exposed to this parody game thinking it was a serious Pokemon game only to find very disturbing content inside. And the problem with this is that PETA considers this a win, because as long as eyes are on their video games, they continue to get attention, which is exactly what they want. They want the clicks on their website, and they want their games being played. Something else that gets under my skin a lot about these video games too is that these are really graphic games with a lot of hard to understand content for younger children and just younger audiences in general. However, if you go to the PETA Kids website or whatever the heck it's called, you can see that all of these games are actually listed to be targeted to children. So PETA wants your children to see these kinds of images, which I think is extremely disturbing and disgusting. But anyway, so following the Pokemon game, PETA continued to release a few other parody games, however, none really gained as much attention as Pokemon Black and Blue did. There is a game called Kitten Squad that you can play on Nintendo Switch or PlayStation 4. There is a game called Paintball Hero, Meat is Murder, and Cage Fight. However, none gained the notoriety of their earlier titles. And for the record, not a single one of these games received good reviews. Just saying. Now, just a moment ago, I said that PETA does not care if children view their excessively gory content. And I even showed you us kind of scrolling through the PETA Kids thing where you could see that those video games were listed for children to play. And you might be thinking to yourself, this organization wouldn't intentionally target children. This has to be a mistake. However, if you believe that, then you're really not gonna like what I'm about to show you. In addition to PETA's attempts to enter the video game industry, which I could obviously argue, as you've seen, is targeted at children, they additionally made a comic called Your Mommy Kills Animals. In this comic title page in the bottom right corner, it says, ask your mommy how many animals she killed to make her fur coat. The sooner she stops wearing fur, the sooner animals will be safe. And by the wording, it is implied that you would give this material to a child to shock them and get their attention with very gory and disturbing imagery. And by then, by proxy, they would go home and ask their mom why these images exist. But hey, you know what kind of video this is, so of course I have more than just one example for you. In 2015, PETA faced outrage with a controversial billboard, which I'm sure you're so surprised about, but it featured a child smoking a Havana cigar. They used this imagery of a child smoking a lit cigar to tell people not to eat meat. A lot of people were very obviously outraged that a child was being photographed for a campaign smoking a cigar. Now, whether or not the cigar was photoshopped in, was not lit, or whatever it was, the point was made that there was an implication that eating meat is worse than allowing your child to smoke. And this outrage was very, very justified, because the Advertising Standards Authority later banned the ad because of the very suggestion. They said that it was hugely misleading and should not appear again. This next ad campaign was something that hit very close to home for many of my fans that watch this channel. The marketing campaign was called Got Autism, and this was a direct play off of the well-known milk ads they say for Got Milk. Now, this abomination occurred in 2008, and it was a massive billboard in Newark, New Jersey, and it tried to draw the connection that if you drink milk, your child was more likely to be autistic. Now, I know by now many of you have seen my video about Autism Speaks, and I think you can fairly assess my opinion on this kind of message, and see how I feel about someone who is willing to misrepresent those individuals who are on the spectrum for the sake of spreading a message that isn't even factual. Much like the anti-vaxxers, this ad obviously drew the ire of absolutely everybody. Here's where things get a little more messed up than usual. After the billboard was taken down by the advertising company, PETA still tried to make fake claims on its website that their PR stunt was a huge success and actually helped autistic children worldwide. I have no idea how this kind of advertising helped anyone. It does not spread any message about the dairy industry, which I think in some convoluted way was their actual message they were trying to get out, but somehow they managed to mess that up too. Then we have the McDonald's Unhappy Meal. As many of you are probably aware, McDonald's sells a children's combo meal that are often called Happy Meals. So PETA decided to try and ruin that too. They created something called an Unhappy Meal. In 2009, they handed out unhappy meals full of bloodied rubber chickens and a packet of ketchup blood. From my understanding with this ad campaign, they actually handed out their unhappy meals to actual children, which understandably terrified them. Once again, my issue here is that if they were trying to target an adult audience, why were they doing this and scaring children purposefully? You didn't have to do that, but you did, and you look like monsters for it. Now, this section right here is the whole reason why I decided to make this video in the first place. I came across this information about PETA supporting domestic terrorism groups, and I thought I already had a strong dislike of PETA until I read this. I have no idea that they could stoop down to this low of a level. Now, once again, this sounds absolutely absurd that a large nonprofit like PETA would want to be associated with groups of people that are on FBI watch lists and are noted as legitimate domestic terrorism groups. However, they are. PETA provides aid and comfort for the Earth Liberation Front, known as ELF, and the Animal Liberation Front, known as ALF. These two groups alone are responsible for over 600 crimes since 1996, with an FBI estimate of these two groups causing more than $43 million in damage. Bruce Friedrich, PETA's vegan campaign director and third in command of the nonprofit, did not seem to care when he addressed the Animal Rights 2001 convention in Virginia, telling a crowd of over 1,000 activists that, and I quote, "blowing stuff up and smashing windows is a great way to bring about animal liberation." In fact, according to a 2002 Washington Times editorial, they allege that PETA had been connected to ALF since the 1980s, saying the following: PETA having ties with terrorists are nothing new. PETA has served as the de facto spokesgroup for ELF in the late 1980s, holding press conferences to praise ELF criminals and field media questions just hours after laboratories were destroyed or buildings burned down. To add to that, another 2002 article from the New York Post shows where funding from PETA was going directly to benefit domestic terrorism. On April 20th, 2001, PETA donated $1,500 to the North American Earth Liberation Front to support their program activities. Additionally, while looking through PETA's financials, it was also discovered that PETA donated over $70,000 to the defense of one name named Rodney Coronado. Now, if that name does not sound familiar, allow me to enlighten you. Rodney Coronado is an animal rights activist. He was jailed in 1995 in connection with an arson attack on February 28, 1992 on research facilities at Michigan State University, which had an estimated damage cost of $125,000. But what's more devastating is that it destroyed 32 years of research data. And this is the trial that PETA donated over $70,000 to this man's defense, for a man that did that. But he was causing large amounts of damage before he essentially bombed part of a university. In 1986, he sank 2 whaling fleet ships that caused about $2 million worth of damage. So this man was thoroughly committed to use violence to try and spread a message. However, he just overshadowed his message with his own violence, rendering his entire message moot. Additionally, in February 2006, he was arrested on a felony charge of using an incendiary device at a public gathering at Hillcrest Neighborhoods in San Diego. This indictment directly related to a 2003 fire in San Diego that destroyed an apartment complex, causing an estimated $50 million worth of damage. A banner was found at the scene inscribed with the initials of ELF.
This is the biggest act of eco-terrorism in U.S. history. A fire deliberately set on the night of August 1st, 2003 that destroyed this nearly completed $23 million apartment complex just outside San Diego. A fire set to protest urban sprawl.
It was the biggest fire I have ever responded to as a firefighter.
By the time the fire burned itself out the next morning, all that remained was a 12-foot-long banner that read, "If you build it, we will burn it." Also on the banner was the acronym ELF. When you saw that banner, what went through your mind?
I knew I had a problem.
A problem because he knew what ELF stood for, the Earth Liberation Front.
So yeah, this is just another example of the fantastic way PETA uses their money, is to support actual criminals who blow up parts of universities. But hey, let's take a minute to talk about a company that doesn't support terrorism, and let's talk about an awesome VPN service that I use and a company that works with me and many other creators to help us make the amazing content we make for you, NordVPN. Now, I know a lot of you are staying home right now, whether it's because you already work from home, maybe there's bad weather, or, maybe some other things. But whether you are staying on the go or staying cozy at home, make sure the way you browse on the net is safe, because the last thing you want is to find out your ISP has been saving your data to sell to third-party companies. So use a VPN to make sure you're browsing safely and securely all the time. And using a VPN means you get access to more content. Is a YouTube video blocked in your country? Well, now you can just change countries. It's like having unlimited videos now, which is great considering how we're all kind of staying indoors for a little bit. NordVPN has over 5,500 fast servers in over 60 countries, so you'll have no problems connecting to other servers for whatever it is that you need. And there's no data logging ever, so they're not collecting anything. So if you want to try NordVPN, now is literally the most perfect time. Make sure you go to nordvpn.org/Illuminaughtii and use my code Illuminaughtii at checkout to receive 70% off a 3-year plan with 1 month for free when you sign up using my link. So get to it and protect your internet today, and also big thank you to NordVPN for making this video possible. So now, after hearing this kind of information about PETA, it all seemed incredibly unbelievable to me. It was hard for me to think that PETA could sink much lower than they already did. They spend an incredible amount of money in advertising and shock value postings and games and whatever else they can come up with to try and just terrorize the general public. And if their whole purpose was just to create distress in the population and make people hate them, I would agree in saying that they were a fantastic organization because they were definitely achieving their goals. However, as their name theoretically implies, they are the people for the ethical treatment of animals. This is the kind of stuff that they spend their hard-earned donations on. They have used some of their donations to target children, to appeal to domestic terrorists, and to create propaganda that ultimately goes nowhere and does nothing for them. And yet at the same time, they support huge celebrities that are direct hypocrites of the movement they claim to stand for. And of course, don't forget that impressive kill rate. And by impressive, I mean depressing. So now at this point, I almost fully anticipate that I will probably have to revisit PETA in the future. This is an organization that seems to get worse as you dig deeper into it. While on the surface level, we can immediately look at their kill ratios for pets that are brought to them, and we can look at their more publicized stunts like their racy Super Bowl ads. But when you start to peel those superficial layers back and look at what they're actually spending their money on and how those expenditures don't seem to actually benefit the organization, you really need to start to wonder, where does that donation money go? And I'm not going to say that you should not donate to PETA. If that's what you choose to do and spend your money on, I can't stop you, and I won't try to. However, if you are the type of person to support this, and particularly support the act of giving excessively gory and violent imagery to children because you have no sensitivity left for children, then you're a different type of messed up, and you really aren't a person I want to associate with in the slightest. And for the record, I may not like PETA, and while I may not like what they stand for, I have seen some of you writing in my comment section advocating violence, and you cannot fight fire with fire, and this includes fighting PETA. The best way to deal with an organization like this is to not give them your money. Do not play their games, do not click on their materials. Advocating that something bad should happen to them is counterproductive to the message that I believe we all really want to be spread about them. What you do is you give them a reason to be the victim. And unlike the dogs and cats that did not have the opportunity to be saved by PETA, you should not give them the opportunity to look like a poor helpless animal being attacked by internet bullies. And so that is where I'm going to be ending today's video. I know there was a lot of really uncomfortable information that was put forward today, so let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. And make sure to like today's video and share it around with your friends to spread awareness of what PETA actually spends their money on. And of course, if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. If you guys want more content from me, you can pop open my description box. You're gonna find links to my second channel for my puppy Casper, the collaboration channel I have with some of my YouTuber friends called Sad Milk, and of course, all of my social media will be linked down below. So again, guys, thanks for making it to another video. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you again, NordVPN, for the sponsor. You're the real MVP, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye, guys.